Wonderful. Tammy, as you mentioned about Nurture Hearts therapy and other therapies as well. So I have a question. Could you please talk about your experience while working in India? You know, when you were working with the migrant community and migrant children. So how was your
Yeah.
experience while working with those kids?
Uh, you're going to get me teary eyed. I know you got teary eyed when I was even when I was working with them. You got teary eyed. I mean, it was so hard because we were there such a short time, and I think that was the
Exactly.
hardest thing about it is that in order to do this work, you have to spend a significant amount of time there. And I felt
Exactly.
like it, you know, with I think with many of these volunteer programs, when they're short, it's often okay. Is it for us American volunteers to make us feel good? And then we're leaving the children and making the
Yes.
children feel worse. And it really was an eye opener in terms of that piece of it that, you know, if doing this work, you need to be in there and you need to stay there and you need to do the work.
Exactly.
Hopefully one day in the future, I would love to just have that time to stay and to be there. I mean, it was really showing though that play, you know, the language of play is universal. I mean, those kids, they were able to connect on such a beautiful level. I mean, to connect to our hearts and that piece of it through us just doing those attachment based type of games and the yoga
Right.
and the movement. We did yoga
Music
and they,
therapy as well.
yeah, and it was just it wasn't so much the therapy, it was the attachment and the play. And play is therapeutic. So it doesn't have to be labeled play therapy. It's the
Right.
attachment and the relationship through play that we're entering their world. And you saw that with the yoga. I mean, you've been at the migrant camps, you've been to those camps before, right? So in terms
Right. Right.
of seeing it, did it look different through the games that we did of the yoga and those things than when other volunteers have been there? Did you see a shift
Right.
in the children in that?
Well, since you guys left, I haven't been there for like, I used to go there for like once in a week, and then I left from that place. But after you guys left, those people were very engaged with the education activities actually, because we used to replicate the same activities which you taught them. So when we used to do all those activities, they were literally engaging themselves with those activities. So I would say those activities are really helpful for them.
Yeah, I wish I was could go back there right now. It was, yeah. I mean, it was just. I think that piece of it was so hard. Just that it was so short, but to see
Right,
them light up when we were able to do, you know, from the yoga to the other pieces that the, you know, the connectedness. Very few were resistant, and to
right,
see that piece of it, and to that's what we see with children and for so many of the kids in the migrant camps who are so traumatized. And when we're looking at trauma and we're looking at the brain, they go into this fight or flight mode, and that it's hard for them to be able to make decisions and to be safe, and that when they're able to play these type of games that are grounding, it's like the only time that they're really feeling safe. And so I hope there's more of that, and I hope that there's more work being done. There's a wonderful group, and I can't even think. There, and they go all over to the migrant camps and all over the world, and they spend 6 months to a year and doing play and teaching
wow,
their play. And whenever there's been a crisis, from, you know, in Haiti, and they've been all over, and these guys are doing the most magical work, and they are invested. Their homes are, it's the world of children, and they are going in and they are
right,
spending significant amount of time training staff, making sure that everybody knows their stuff before moving on to the next person. So they are not just like coming in and putting a couple things in. It really, it's community wide. It's for me to be doing it, and part of my work, which I would love to be doing, is coming into the communities and really doing intensive trainings and being able to really, you know, have that book and having them having an agenda, so they're really able to be doing this on a deeper level. And we know it's kind of passing it from one person to another, of really continuing it than just one person coming in for 2 weeks and being able to really do this work. And maybe you guys,
Wow.
maybe part of it is me sharing some of this with you, for you all to be continuing to do this work, because trainings can be done virtually.
Right, right. We would love
Exactly.
to do that.
Yeah, yeah. And we have learned so many things from you while we were working on the same project with the migrant camp. And I think you remember I told you that I'm not good with kids. So
Yeah.
you said like, no, 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 you can be. No worries, I'll be there. So I was like trying to learn so many things, and I was trying to be good with kids. So,
And
so
you were
I
wonderful with the
remember.
kids.
Yeah, I remember when we were working there, you were facing a lot of language barrier and other, different kinds of problems for they were not able to understand us, and we were not able to explain them in their own language. So my question is that how were the challenges in applying play therapy different in India than it is in the US?
Yeah. Well, I think that I didn't so much apply the play therapy within there. I mean, I gave the attachment-based games, and we played games, and that's all part of the play and the universal language of play and how we connected, besides for you interpreting things for them. But I think that the beauty of play is that we know that play is play, and that splashing
Yes,
in puddles for children is worldwide, and having these playing in nature is worldwide, and that no matter the socioeconomic, the trauma, the different pieces, if we can get kids to that place where they're able to play, and not, because some kids are afraid to play and it's hard for them, and they're afraid to let loose because they have to be on guard. If I
right,
play, what happens if I get hurt? What happens if I get attacked? Like, they have to be in high alert all the time, which is a hard way to live. So, but when we're able to, the most important thing, if we could find kids to be able to have that place, because for many kids they don't have that safe place, but they could still find those moments of engaging in play, and that's where the true healing is, and that's where the language for kids is, within that play. So no matter where it is, it's really being able, through games, through throwing the ball, through anything. I mean, the kids had all the hand games that they taught me. They
right,
had
right,
their
right,
own type of play, and hearing them sing and teach me how they played was beautiful. And you just
right.
saw the moments of, I learned so much from them, and I learned about their play. And I didn't learn, I knew, but to see within the migrant camps where they had nothing, where they had no toys, where they had no internet, where they had no phones, and how they were
Exactly.
able. I mean, one of my favorite things when I saw them, they were up top on the hill, and they were probably shouldn't have been there, and they were just throwing water at each other. And it was just totally chaotic, and they were laughing and having just this beautiful time. And I show this picture that looks very similar to that in my play therapy trainings, of these kids in the water, and they're throwing water at each other. And I ask, what do you see? And what do you not see? And you just see this pure joy.
Yes.
And you see this, when you see this pure joy and this happiness of, there's so much stuff going wrong in their world, and there's so many trials, and there's so much trauma, and so many things that are hard. When you're in the moment of those playful moments, we need to like take those moments and help to embrace them, and know that, what does it feel like that they can take these things, and like they're the moments to highlight and to, amplify, for them to be able to know, how did it feel then, how
Yeah.
did it feel in their body, how did it feel in their hearts, how did it, because kids hold these things in their body, and they hold anxiety, and they hold trauma in their body. But when they're moving around and they're getting it out in these playful type of ways, it's their world. It's their world of healing. And so it's absolutely universal. All kids need play.
Wow. Okay. So my question is that next, did you find any age, particularly like, age responding? So what age basically children's give you respond in a good way or in a bad way?
I think when we are connecting with kids, it's from every age. It's from, one of the things I'm trained in is something called first play kinesthetic storytelling. So we do the story in infant massage. So from conception to how we take care of it, right? To the time the baby is born, babies need eye contact. They need being held. They need for us to have facial gestures for back and forth. So if you have a parent who has been traumatized and you have a parent who has a postpartum depression, their face, they have a still face, there's nothing. So you think of a baby who's in need and they're looking at a parent and there's nothing. And that's the development of the brain from the birth to 3 is so important for there to be that interaction, for a baby to know when they cry, they're going to be fed. When they cry, they're going to be held. And many of these kids in the migrant camps, that didn't happen. So they'd have no trust in the world due to very early trauma. But what we know is that the brain, we're able, no matter how bad the trauma is, we know that the brain, we call it neuroplasticity, that the more we train the brain to build these healthy attachments, even if there was trauma very early, these kids have a chance. And that's why our work is so important. And that's why I'm so passionate about this work, is that every kid has a chance. And no matter what the trauma is, we're able to have those connections and to be able to know that everyone has a chance, and we have the power to be able to make a difference. And that's what's so important about our work.
Yeah.
But it's really the
I would love to ask you very emotional. Right. I would like to ask you very emotional question. Would you like to share any story or any case study so that our audience can relate and we can also learn from your case study or from your story, which is very close to your heart?
Oh, goodness.
The journey of one child, that's that story that's very dear to you.
It's so hard to say, because I'll be honest with you, every story is dear to me, because I find my work so sacred, and I find each of my kids' stories so sacred. So I think a part of that is, even in terms of telling stories, it's like in a way that's that, even though I'm not telling names, it's that confidentiality of like their stories of not bringing it online. But I would say that the most important work in terms of, especially with kids who've been adopted and who really are so disconnected with their adopted parents. Like I have one child, and which is very common with kids who have attachment issues, that they don't want to be touched. They don't want to be left. They just, have a wall against them. And we did these superhero gadgets. So we do gadgets of different, out of Play-Doh, of what are different powers you can have. And if you could have any power, what would it be? It's one of my favorite activities to do in my trainings and with anyone, because this idea of powers and play is so therapeutic. So the child did his power was he would throw it like a lasso around his mom and say, Geronimo. And whenever he was mad, he'd say Geronimo, and the lasso would go around his adopted mom, and he would pull it in, and mom would hug him.
Oh.
And they did this. Once he made this superhero gadget, and I worked with this kid for years, every time he got upset, he did Geronimo for mom to come in and to hug him, which was like,
Okay.
this was a kid who could not even be touched by his mother, but his gadget of having a safe place was to be able to have this lasso come in and embrace him. So I think of that, and I just think of these moments of disconnect, and I think of these parents who come in and they don't want to say they can't stand their child, but within these moments they can't. And I see it as this process of them falling back in love or in love with their child if they've never had it. And it's through these activities of pure connection and them understanding each other, and the parents having to cross over to the child's world to be able to truly understand them. Children have an array of issues, from sensory to autism to learning disabilities to so many things, and they have different lacking skills. There's a man named Ross Greene in America who wrote the book Explosive Child, and he talks about collaborative problem solving, and that we need to look at every issue that a child has in terms of them being rigid, that it could be that they just lack the skills. They don't have the skills in their brain, so we have to teach them the skills rather than yell at them. So how are we first looking at what are the things that kids are lacking and understanding that, so we could help them and give them the tools, than just saying no. We can't tell kids no hitting, no biting, and without saying, what do we replace it with? Like, we can't hit, but what do we need to do to help them and give them the tools? Because we're not giving tools. We're giving behavioral plans and checklists for good behavior, but they don't know what to do with it because we're not teaching them. Right. So there's so much more that we have to do in encompassing the whole brain of the child. Dan Siegel's work, another wonderful person in the United States, wrote the book, The Whole Brain Child. And we have to look at the whole brain of the child in order to do this work. It's not like it's just one thing. It's really understanding all these different pieces. But no matter what the pieces are and what the challenges the child has emotionally, from trauma, from wiring, we do know that holding a safe space and being able to ground the child on a sensory level is what we need to do. That connection is the only way. We have to have that connection before doing anything up. That is the foundation of our work, is that connection and holding that safe place in that environment. If the child doesn't have that connection with their parent, they're not going to care. The parent can take away everything, they're not going to care. But if the child fully knows that the parent has their back or the clinician has their back, that changes everything. We know that as adults. If we're being told what to do and lectured at, we're going to push them away. But if we know that that person sees us, like really sees us, we're going to want to be with them. We're going to want to be in their world, not a world where somebody's telling us what to do.
That's amazing.
That's really cool.
So all these experiences that you have shared with both of us, they're amazing. I mean, they're eye-opening for both of us. My work is in mental health field. His work is in community mobilizing. But the insights that you gave about the basic connections that all the children share with their caregivers and parents, and what is our role, how nurturance can also be beneficial, and how nurturance can also be used to set the appropriate boundaries without, compromising their freedom to express themselves, to connect with other person. It's amazing. It's awesome. I'm actually thankful to you and Ankur also for introducing me to this platform so that I could interact with you.
I'm so happy to be here. I'm just curious, what would be your takeaways, or how do you see yourself just from a little bit of this work using it within your practice now?
Actually, since I work with a lot of clinical, I mean, adult clients, of course, but wherever I can see the childhood issues cropping up, maybe somewhere I would be able to understand what kind of nurturance they would have benefited from. And if I could be that person who can give them that safe space to just express themselves in any way possible, I would try to be that.
Yes, yes. So, yeah, I so much appreciate you coming on, and I think this video will be helpful to so many. And
Of
I'd be
course.
happy to share it as well on my because it take we're all in this together. We're all going through the pandemic together. We're going through everything together. And as as you can see, and as Ankur knows how passionate I am about this work, I have this knowledge, and the purpose of this knowledge is to be able to share it, and for people to then learn more and find out more and get more resources. I seem to be the person who has introduced play therapy and introduced this to many people, and then they come back and say, "Oh, I first heard it from you." And I feel like that's my biggest blessing, that if I could just start it and say, "Oh, this is pretty amazing. I want to learn more. I want to do more. I want more training," is just, that's the biggest gift for me, is for there to be people who want to listen, and for there to be an audience, and to be able to take this and to do more with it. So I'm so appreciative for you guys having me on.
And
Thank
I
you so
hope
much.
you wouldn't mind if we have any of the viewers comment or have any questions for you. Could we pass them on to you?
Absolutely, absolutely. No problem. They can absolutely pass it on to me, and if we could try to do something like this again.
Sure,
And
definitely.
yeah, so I that would be wonderful. But absolutely, pass on questions, and whatever I can do. I have a very special place in my heart in India, and so it's a privilege to be able to come on and chat with you guys.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, best of luck to you guys, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, bye.
Bye, guys.
Good luck. Good
Thank
luck.
you. Take care.
Take care, both of you.
You too. Bye.